Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
So everybody's calling for Kevin and Andrew Berry's job, and even Paul DePodesta. In my honest opinion, I would not fire them because, as you saw, the Jets have fired basically the general manager, head coach, etc. And I think that if we fire Kevin and Andrew, I think the Jets will, jump on Kevin and Andrew fast just because of the relationship that they have. If Kevin is in a stable environment where the owner and, the fan base is better, he's going to win a Super Bowl. And we all knew how that turned out when we had Bill Belichick as our head coach. So I'm just making it aware to Browns fans, we cannot jump the gun or fire Kevin Stefanski because we're having a bad year. If Jimmy does it, we're going to have a whole nother rebuild. And that's not fair to Kevin. So, yeah, go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, I covered the Belichick Browns, and nobody thought Bill Belichick was going to be the type of head coach that he was. Was a smart guy, made some really interesting decisions, pissed off the media and the fan base.
Yeah.
But again, the question is, if you are going to move on from Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, even one or the other, it's a rebuild because you're going to have different types of skill sets and players that you're going to want. So the question becomes, what do you think of the overall roster? Was it as good as we thought before the season? Probably not. Is it as bad as it looks right now? Probably not.
Yeah, it's probably the easiest thing to do in all sports is overvalue your own roster because the lens of which you see the game. I try to be as impartial as I can be looking at other rosters, and I know that if you were to interview 31 other GMs, there are several GMs that would probably take this roster over the ones that they either inherited or they've built. But there's definitely, they weren't as deep as they thought they were, and they weren't able to sustain some of the things, the injuries that happened and stuff like that. But I'll also put this out there when people talk about tear it all down and get a new head coach and a new GM, and you have the talent to win. Well, if you do that, you're going to have different talent. They're not going to be the new GM that comes in. They're not going to be married to these guys. These aren't the players they pick. They're going to want their own guys. So be prepared that if they do that, they're going to get rid of a lot of the people that you value. Just keep that in mind. That's something, and that's not just here. That's all of pro sports. Anytime a new regime comes in, they want to put their stamp on it. And if that means some players that you think are untradeable, all of a sudden they become pretty tradable pretty quickly. The comparisons with Belichick, it's funny because they both give non-answers in pressers, but Bill's is a very different approach. He was surly and grumpy, and Stefanski's just giving you just straight up coach speak. You might get a glimpse of agitated Stefanski every now and again when he's answered the same question with different phrasing for the third time straight. But they're different approaches. But like you said, no one saw Bill reaching the greatest heights any NFL coach has ever reached. No one saw that in the early 90s when he was in Cleveland, I promise you.
No.
But he was at the cutting edge of a lot of things. And if you look at the staffs he was able to assemble, a lot of those guys went on to become GMs and head coaches. And we have one right here in Schwartz. Schwartz was part of that. He was one of the gophers for Bill, just doing anything he could just to hang around an NFL team. So Bill's had an eye for talent. We haven't yet seen anyone leave Stefanski and have any modicum of success, except for Drew Petzing in Arizona. That is something that to monitor there. But they're very different approaches here, and it's not guaranteed. I can't guarantee that Stefanski wins a Super Bowl. That's a nice statement. There's no guarantee of that for any NFL head coach, even no matter how many awards you've won or success that you've had. But we do look around our own division, and you see the stability. That's what you're aiming for. That doesn't mean you put up with subpar coaching just to get to the stability. You want to thread that needle, but at the end of the day, that's what you're aiming for. Is you do want true stability in your franchise, so you can have a foundation from which to build.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, you never knew what was going on behind closed doors when Belichick was there. Same thing that drives people crazy about Stefanski was the same thing. He was just a little bit more standoffish, and again, I never had any issue with him because if you asked him thoughtful football questions, you got really thoughtful answers. If you just threw stuff out there, he was going to throw it back at you, and he didn't care what it looked like, and that's one of the reasons that he rubbed a lot of the media the wrong way.